And Elgeyo Marakwet. This comes in the midst of a police and military joint operation meant to flush out bandits from the northern counties. Chichi Josephine reports.
Even as security personnel remain on guard in the northern counties in the ongoing operation to flush out bandits, the rate at which people are losing lives in Baringo North and Elgeyo Marakwet counties continues to cause concern countrywide. The latest incident being just today, where two people lost their lives in two separate attacks in Baringo and Elgeyo Marakwet.
Watoto wangu wale wanaitwa Kablela wamemalizika. Hapo wote wamemaliza.
Sai wakora wanaona serikali hawana nguvu hata moja. Ndio sasa sisi tutaishi sasa katika hali ya kunyongwa kama wananchi.
In the first attack, one person was shot dead in Murkoto area of Marakwet East by suspected armed bandits who also made away with 20 herds of cattle and 40 goats.
Hizi ni miezi 6 imepita, watu wetu bado wanauawa. Na saa hizi Mheshimiwa Rais, watu wetu wamechoka mpaka wanatuuliza kwani mko serikali ama mko opposition.
Nataka niambie Rais, hii serikali yako ikikuwa overrun na bandits ambao hata wanaindawia, tutakuwa tukifanya nini kwa Kenya hii? Kama serikali if bandits ambayo hawana inawia, hawana training, hawana sophisticated, hawana helicopter, overrun the military and overrun the police, then nini mebaki?
In the second incident, a middle-aged man was shot dead by an unknown number of suspected armed bandits while herding his livestock in Kosile area, Baringo County, and an unknown number of livestock driven away towards Loya Morok in Tiati constituency.
Tulitoa honyo kwa serikali ya kwamba tumeitisha jeshi ndio umetupatia. Lakini mchikasa nati kwa sababu kuleta jeshi ni kiwango ya mwisho. It is a last option. If jeshi wakishindwa, what happens? This becomes a banana republic.
The man became the third person to lose his life in less than a week in Baringo, as the bodies of those who were shot dead previously are still lying at Baringo County Referral Hospital.
Wamama wanasaa msituni, watoto wanalala msituni, shule hakuna, watu wanakufa.
With the unbated killings, the government declared an operation in 6 counties. The first phase of the operation yielded no fruits, as more killings have been reported in Baringo despite heavy presence of both the Kenya Defence Force and the police.
Tunataka kuomba Rais, you have brought army officers here and the police, but there is nothing which is going on here, Your Excellency.
Kama wamekosa kazi, hii mabunduki wako nayo Jimbolingo hapo wamekaa wanalala na kula nyama, wapatie raia waende wanyoroshe hii nyingine. Afadhali wapatie sisi hiyo silaha twende tunyoroshana na hawa watu kuliko kwa sababu sisi tunachua msitu, tunachua kila kitu.
Chichi Josephine, TV47.
And still on matters insecurity in the north, despite heading to the call by Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki to evacuate specific areas that are bandit hideouts, families in Loiborngare, Samburu County are facing a humanitarian crisis. The families who are joining hands to build makeshift camps are lamenting the harsh weather and starvation, further calling on the government to make the pledge true and provide aid to them. It is a beehive of activity here in Loiborngare, Samburu County, as these women rush against time to make their new homes with sticks before dusk dawns. Beatrice Lesuruto has lit a fire to boil water in this small makeshift camp as she ponders what her next meal will be.
Hatuna chakula, tunakaa tu hivi. Hakuna kitu yoyote. Hakuna pahali ya kulala, tunalala kwa hii manyumba. Hatuna hata watoto wetu wamekufa, ng'ombe imeenda, mbuzi, kitu yote imeenda.
Lesuruto's case is just a tip of the iceberg here. Despite heeding to the call to evacuate bandit hideouts, including Malasso Escarpment, Pura Valley and Tungai Conservancy in Samburu County by Interior CS Professor Kithure Kindiki, these families, who have now become internally displaced persons, are facing a humanitarian crisis.
Naomba serikali turudishe sisi kwetu kwa sababu hakuna kila kitu. Nakaa tu bila nguo, bila karampeti, bila karatasi. Sisi niko shida kabisa.
The women here, most of them clutching their babies on their backs, tell us that since they fled their homes, the government has not stepped in to provide any aid.
Hata tukiwa hapa mvua inanyesha na hatuna usaidizi yote kwa sababu hata hakuna pale tutaweza kuenda kwa sababu maboma imeharibika. Watoto waendi shule, hata sasa hatujui tutafanya nini.
In a press statement dated 15th March 2023, Professor Kindiki assured members of the public that the land and air operation to flush out bandits in the specified areas will ensure no individual is displaced from their home or places without support.
Na tungeona zaidi Waziri Kindiki ama ile special program wangekuja hapa kwanza kuletea watu hema kwa sababu inanyesha. Kuja kuletea watu chakula kwa sababu hawana. Wangeletea watu dawa kwa sababu mahali tunasimama sasa ni mahali baridi sana na watoto wataumia na watu wazima ama wazee wataumia.
Things that you should be doing now ni kupea watu hema ya kuishi hapa. Sisi tunajaribu kusaidia chakula, tunaomba pia nyinyi msaidie chakula.
And as the sun sets here in Loimbongare, these families can only hope for better tomorrow and that the makeshift camps they made will survive the harsh weather conditions. Stanley Nyeringita, TV47. Let's get into some politics now. And President William Ruto has warned Azimio leader Raila Odinga over his plan of holding protests twice a week, likening the plan to what he terms as economic tourism. This coming as the Azimio Brigade has delivered a notice of the planned protests to the police, saying armed plain-clothed individuals will be considered thugs.
Tonight, the Azimio and Kenya Kwanza factions are digging in on the hardline positions on the mass action protest, with each side vowing not to let up. Speaking during the launch of a pension underwriting portfolio that allows ordinary Kenyans to invest as low as 500 shillings, the president called out Odinga and the Azimio Brigade, likening their Monday and now Thursday protest to economic terrorism.
There is no reason whatsoever for anyone to stand in the way of free enterprise, disrupt business, or sabotage economic activity, or work as economic terrorists for personal selfish interest. Such impunity must be dealt with firmly and full accountability enforced to vindicate Kenya's commitment as a free market economy. Once again,
Ruto's tough talking is coming at a time the country was reportedly lost at least 2 billion shillings on Monday demonstrations, now promising to deal with Odinga in order to safeguard the business environment for the hustlers who were greatly affected during the demonstration.
I also want to give you my commitment that the business and investment environment in Kenya is secure and conducive on a continuous basis. Through the rule of law, the government will take robust measures to honor and respect the rights of all and demonstrate that no one is above the law by decisively combating impunity, lawlessness, and disorder.
While this was going on, a section of Azimio top leadership was making their way to the Nairobi Regional Police Commander to formally serve the police with a notice of their planned demonstration scheduled for February 27 and 30th, 2023.
The Council of the Azimio met and decided that we will continue with demonstrations next week on Monday and Thursday. Thereafter, we shall be releasing other programs that we will have thereafter.
But we are not doing this because you require the permit from the police officers for you to hold demonstrations in this country. This is a right given to every Kenyan under the Constitution.
In their notification, Azimio says their procession will take place on all major streets in the Nairobi Central Business District, thereby asking Bungei to deploy enough police officers for security. But in what is likely to come as headwinds, Bungei now says that the opposition Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party's notification of protest to be held next week in a letter addressed to his office is null and void. According to Bungei, while not entirely wrong in doing so, the notification letter was addressed to the wrong person. The police boss, in a subsequent press address, said that the Azimio team should instead have addressed and served the letter to the officer commanding police station, OCS, of the area where they expect to stage their procession. Paul Kirobi, TV47, Nairobi.
Meanwhile, President William Ruto is facing a tough balancing act after Azimio coalition leader Raila Odinga declared 2 weekly mass protests to force the government heed to the opposition demands. The Azimio demos likely to ruin businesses and put pressure on the economy have left the president in the hand for options on how to balance the demos and save a battered economy. The president's dilemma on how to tame the opposition has further been complicated by Azimio's mistrust in the international community to spearhead any truce.
President William Ruto's joke at the Nairobi Stock Exchange, making light of Azimio's declaration to hold mass action twice a week, is yet another hardline position in the ongoing political posturing with the opposition to resolve the ongoing impasse on the opposition demands.
I am looking forward to days in the very near future when we will be reporting every Monday and every Thursday to be the days that were traded highest in the Nairobi Stock Exchange.
On the other hand, an unrelenting Azimio, soon to hit the streets on Monday and Thursday next week to pile pressure on the president to act, has hardened its position against the government, laying out conditions for the government for normalcy to return.
The ball, in my view, falls squarely on William Ruto. When Uhuru Kenyatta was faced with similar circumstances, and we don't want to get into how those circumstances were, he became the bigger of the two and decided to climb down and come and listen to what the issues were. The rest of what happened is history. I know there are people who have been saying that all this is to try and get into handshake. We want to say, of the 3 issues that are key to us, handshake is not among the issues on the table.
President William Ruto is in a dilemma. The double weekly mass action will ruin businesses, inflicting more pain to the already battered economy, a threat not just to the president's international image, but to the country as an investment destination. The president's allies have ruled out dialogue between the two sides, saying Odinga is only after the handshake.
Cannot have that thing going on forever. It is time now that we deal with this thing once and for all, that the kiosk of handshake issues is no more. And even where I stand, I will advise the president that he cannot give in to this issue of Raila going for handshake after every election.
There was fear for dialogue when Azimio joined us. I'm telling you, people will be crying, nobody will be trying to listen to them. So we want the so-called opposition, the Raila team, to be checking on us. If we go wrong, let them come and press us and say you are going wrong here. But not to wait for after the election. Always we know about all these issues. When he loses, there is no one day he has said he has lost. He normally says he's winning and he's not going to the house in the hill.
Attempts by the president to weaken Odinga's political base by wooing a section of Azimio leaders have not borne fruit in stopping the momentum, handing the task to religious leaders and the international community to broker a truce. Azimio has deep mistrust for the international community, especially the United Kingdom, which the coalition claims lobbied the United States and the European Union to ignore their election rigging claims. An attempt by the United Kingdom to send emissaries to Odinga last week on Wednesday to end the demos came to a cropper after Odinga rejected their proposal. A letter sent to newsrooms by Odinga's spokesperson Dennis Onyango for the Azimio coalition deepens Azimio's mistrust of the international community after the opposition claimed the Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent a letter to foreign missions based here in Kenya, blaming Azimio for violence in Monday's demos, and that the international community has remained studiously silent. Apul Kamau, TV47.
And to a conversation that will form the backbone this particular morning, President William Ruto is on the spot from the Law Society and a section of rights groups after Cabinet approved the Privatisation Bill, which seeks to give Treasury powers to privatize parastatals without seeking parliamentary approval. The opposition is also not happy with the move, which the president says will not only raise money for the government, but also give Kenyans a chance to own Kenyan entities.
Yesterday in Cabinet, we approved a new law that will provide mechanisms for Kenyans to own part of what is Kenya.
A move that is likely to become the latest political dog whistle if the reactions it has drawn are anything to go by. The move, which the government says will help in, among other things, help in raising revenue for the government by giving Kenyans a chance to own non-performing parastatals, so the cabinet approved a new law that gives Treasury powers to privatize public-owned enterprises without seeking parliamentary approval.
I made a commitment that government is going to divest so that we can democratize our wealth and allow more Kenyans to own a piece of what is Kenya, and especially entities that are currently Kenyan-owned.
The bill, if passed by the parliament, will repeal the Privatisation Act 2005, ushering in an easier policy framework that will oversee privatization in the country. Leaders drawn from the Azimio coalition have downplayed the move, saying the move is not meant to generate more funds to drive the government development agenda, but to benefit specific individuals in the ruling government. The approval of the bill by cabinet will now strip MPs of their oversight role in the sale of state-owned corporations.
We object strongly to the planned sale of these assets, especially if it is to be done without the scrutiny of Parliament. We will not be party to this grand theft of public assets. If there was a time that members of Parliament needed to take a principled position and stand with their people, then it is now.
According to Law Society of Kenya President Eric Theuri, the decision to bypass Parliament opens up the possibility of abusing powers by the executive. Theuri opines that the privatization needs parliamentary approval for quality checks. However, according to governance experts, the move to privatize these institutions is contrary to the Kenya Kwanza's bottom-up economic model, which they were elected on.
You are in this country, Flora, and you never heard anyone mentioning that they are going to sell parastatals when they get into office as a way to address the economic thing. The only problem we have with this thing now is the timing, the government of the day, and how it is being done.
Some of the corporations that the government has earmarked for privatization include Chemelil Sugar, South Nyanza Sugar, Kabarnet Hotel, and Zoya Sugar. Others are Consolidated Bank, Development Bank of Kenya, Kenya Wine Agencies, Kenya Meat Commission, and public universities. Also in the list is KenGen and Kenya Pipeline.
We want the Member of Parliament for Kandui, where Nzoia Sugar sits, Honorable Makali, to come out. And I want to tell the people of Western, if this machine, if the land of Nzoia, if the land of Mumias is sold, the people to ask are the ones I've told you.
The government-sponsored bill will soon be tabled by National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah as the government seeks to shorten the process of selling parastatals. Flora Limuki, TV 47.
And on the studio, we do have Embakasi North Member of Parliament, Honorable James Gakuya, will be discussing more about the privatization bill later on. But first, Kenya is on high alert following the confirmation of a Marburg outbreak in the neighboring country of Tanzania. The highly contagious Ebola-like disease that was detected following the death of 5 people, including a health worker, is spreading fast, with Tanzania confirming a total of 8 confirmed cases and another 161 contacts under close monitoring. The Port Health Services, through an internal memo dated 17th of March, has ordered for the enhanced screening of all travelers from the affected region at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Zainab Mohammed with more.
Fear is rife at the country's entry points as the neighboring country of Tanzania confirms a first ever Marburg outbreak. The outbreak that originated in northwest Kagera has resulted in the death of 5 people, including a health worker. Kenya's Port Health Services, through an internal memo dated 17th of March, cautioned the relevant officers responsible for screening travelers at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to implement immediate and enhanced screening of passengers arriving from the affected region. At the border points, county health officers have also confirmed the notification from the national government to exercise extra caution in preventing cross-border transmission.
It's a discussion that's ongoing at national level. We have a forum for CECs in the entire country, and we are discussing that on our forum as CECs on all border countries. And we are coming up with a plan to see how we can just take care of that. One of the things we are encouraging, I think Jomo Kenyatta has picked it up. They are already doing the testing. and surveillance is on high alert. We are also getting help from national government. They'll be soon be coming to just make sure that our borders are safe.
Buda Point residents have expressed fear of the Ebola-like virus, calling on swift action from the government to contain the situation that could easily spill over to Kenya.
Serikali yetu ya Kenya, ile serikali kuu na hii serikali yetu ya Busia County, tunaomba wafanye collaboration ya kutosha ili hapa kwa mpaka watu kama inawezekana hata watu wafanye nini, wapimwe. Kwa hiyo ugonjwa ikiingia hapa Busia, na kulingana na vile njaa iko hivi, watu wanaenda huku kutafuta vile wanaweza kukula, hii ugonjwa inaweza kutumaliza.
Kazi wa Busia yangu ni kuomba serikali kuu na serikali yetu ya gatuzi kwamba kuweza kuelimisha umma juu ya hatari za ugonjwa huu. Jambo kuu ni kwamba tusipoelimishwa hakuna lolote tunaweza fanya. Maana ni muhimu sana wizara ya afya kuelimisha umma na jinsi tunaweza kujikinga.
The Marburg virus that has a death rate of 88% is from a virus family responsible for the Ebola virus and is transmitted to people from fruit bats.
Marburg virus is it's a type of a virus that we call hemorrhagic fever viruses. And these viruses, they're called hemorrhagic because they cause massive destruction to red blood cells, and we normally have severe multi-organ involvement. So a person with a hemorrhagic fever has a rapid progression to, it's most likely to die because there's a rapid multi-involvement of organ involvement.
The symptoms of the virus include high fever, severe vomiting, bleeding, headache and renal failure, which typically occurs within 7 days of infection.
Prevention, okay, the first one, because it's originally from the bats, meaning we normally call it a zoonotic disease, meaning it's originally not of the human, of human beings. So the first thing is to just avoid getting in contact with the bats, the African fruit bat. But once in humans, then it means the person who has contracted the virus, once it's suspected that this person could be having not only the Marburg but any hemorrhagic fever virus, then the first thing is to isolate that person and restricting any contact with the fluids from that person. And for maybe healthcare workers who are managing the person, they have to ensure that they are well protected before they handle the person.
Tanzania's outbreak comes barely a month after Equatorial Guinea confirmed a similar first ever outbreak of the virus in the beginning of the year. A total of 8 cases of the virus have been confirmed in Tanzania, 5 of whom are dead and 3 others are undergoing treatment. Another 161 contacts are currently under close monitoring. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
Right, and away from matters health, let's get into the conversation this particular morning, and it is the whole privatization bill. And with me in the studio, Honorable James Gakuya, Member of Parliament, Embakasi North. Very good morning, sir.
Very good morning to you. Ramit Sarut of viewers, wherever they're watching us this early morning. We have leaped enough from Lane. And we say thank you very much from the Almighty, because he has really remembered this country. It was on a very hard situation. But now we have seen the water is even pouring people. Our drainage has to be opened as soon as possible. Otherwise, failure to that, the water will make things, the traffic impassable.
And Engineer Alex Mothia, governance expert. Good morning, sir. I hope the rains have received you well this morning.
Good morning. I'm one of those people who really celebrate the rain.
Okay.
Because this country has been dry for 2 or 3 years, and this is very good. I just pray that it will continue raining. I don't mind the inconveniences of, like, for example, I hope you know that there's a lake somewhere on this road, the newly constructed road here. Mm-hmm. But that's a good thing. Let me take this opportunity to say hello to all the viewers and wish them a great day today.
All right. Honorable James Gakuya, I'll begin with you because I'm pretty sure we do have limited time with you this particular morning. On the privatization bill, as a Member of Parliament, on Tuesday, the Cabinet stripped off the oversight powers that legislators would have on privatizing state-owned parastatals. First and foremost, Your thoughts on this? Do you think this is the right move?
First and foremost, let me say from the onset that privatization of public properties will require the oversight of the House. And that is how the Constitution envisages, because failure to inform the oversight team in the process can see there is a lacuna there. One thing, let me say that in fact, the element of privatization of non-performing parastatals and other businesses which government has an arm in terms of shares, it is of essence. Because we have seen various number of institutions which are totally dimming and they are totally nosediving. We have tried to salvage KQ for the last maybe 5 to 6 years using public taxpayers' money in the budgets. This has not yielded any fruit to date, because every other single month the KQ always counts losses of billions. In this case, it's a matter that in fact will be required to be looked into and evaluated. And I think if there is a way to go, is to look for a better way to resolve that problem.
So are you actually saying that the fact that this particular bill, because it is going to pass through the National Assembly, for approval,
most likely it will.
Is it dead on arrival?
Most likely it will face a lot of opposition.
Okay.
Because actually you cannot strip the powers of the oversight team from these particular processes. I would say yes. Maybe the reason why the cabinet has taken that route is to shorten the process of this privatization. But I still think that even though the parliament is still there, it can still give them the best time possible to prosecute that particular process. So I don't see any good reason why you can eliminate the House from taking part in these particular processes.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, the constitutions, that's a constitutional mandate of the legislature. And oversight is well crafted in the Constitution.
Right. And before I come to engineer, still Mheshimiwa, when you talk about, when it comes to the National Assembly, this is a move that President William Ruto, who is your party leader, really wants to have this particular move, and to among the corporations targeted, the sugar milling plants as well as banks, and this particular so it will basically have to generate basically the cash. Do you feel like there's going to be push from the president to the members of parliament at the end of the day to actually push it?
Of course, the way to prosecute this matter is to persuade the numbers, and especially probably in a PG, maybe also for them to understand why the cabinet have risen to such a decision of eliminating the members of the House in scrutiny of these processes. If that is, it will be well taken to by the members, and especially those members from the ruling. I think in politics it is trying to convince and convince. If the members are convinced that there is enough reason for this, then I think is a matter that will be discussed and agreed on a later date. But as it speaks now, it is not very clear why the cabinet has allowed to this particular case. In terms of the number of considered institutions to be privatized, I have no problem, because you have seen areas like Intercon, and I can tell you the problem that ailing this country, and especially those institutions that under the control of the government, one is that these people went and overborrowed.
Okay.
And this borrowing,
okay,
you realize that this money was not prudently used. It's like it was borrowed and shared elsewhere,
okay,
in portions. And that's, you realize that the pit that actually was created is a big pit that you may try even to settle the whole Kenya Airways. and you cannot be able to overcome or clear those burdens of borrowing. So it's a matter of concern, and I think most of these giant institutions that are unable to move on their legs, time has come of age that we must look at other alternatives to make them move and make them profitable.
Before we come to the alternatives, engineer, this number of state-owned cooperatives right here, most of them are banks, sugar millers, and hotels. What is the root cause of? Let's go back in time and actually try to see where did all this fracas begin in them not actually generating enough.
It's very simple, mismanagement. And it's a known fact worldwide that government can't run business. Simple. So for us to pretend that we can run sugar millers, we can run that as a government, we're cheating ourselves. And this is nothing new. In 2005, people realized during the Kibaki first term, realized that appreciated this fact, and they wanted to offload the parastatals or the government, the business that government was doing to private hands, and that's why a privatization bill was done and became an act of parliament in 2005 to be able to do that, to offload them. So simple, government can run business.
All right.
Period. So government's work is to create policies and offer support to businesses so that they can thrive in an economy. You'll be shocked that including the Reserve Bank of America is a private entity. It's not a government, which is basically the central bank of the United States of America. And that's the direction. But I think in the debate that is on, I'm really getting concerned because we become so political that we actually even forget what we are talking about. A privatization bill was done in 2005.
Yeah.
From 2005, it's failed to privatize parastatals or businesses that government is running. The current government, rightly or wrongly, I'm not sitting here to judge them on a scale of 1 to 10, decide that, look, this thing has taken so long, 2005 to today is 17 years. And they have come up with a bill that tends to address that issue so that you can speed up that process, so that you privatize those businesses that are still sucking our taxes and being wasted, and give them to people who can do that business. They are private sugar millers who are making profits in this country. They are banks. Of course, you know the biggest businesses in this country are banks. They're making money. So which means that if you hand over them to them, then maybe they'll turn around. In my view, that bill seeks to find a way of unlocking. One of the key elements of the act that this bill seeks to expunge, one of the things was it was supposed to allow full purchase, leasing, or it had, I think, 3 or 4 ways of disposing the parastatals. In this one, the proposal is that they go through IPOs, so that people own shares in those businesses, so that as the majority shareholding becomes private, hence the company transfers to private. That's my basic understanding of that, of reading that bill.
Okay.
This bill will go to Parliament because Cabinet has no power to create such a law. Cabinet has no power to expand a law because there are 3 arms of government. So this bill will go to Parliament. And I keep thinking, what is LSK telling us? The Parliament has given their proposal. What is the members of Parliament's proposal? Because they'll be faced with that thing and they will discuss it. They will either pass it or throw it out. All are just areas where they think that there is a problem.
Okay.
But you can't be stuck with a 2005 bill, Act of Parliament, that is not working for us for 17 years and pretend that we are doing something.
Hold that particular thought. I want us to cue up a soundbite by President William Ruto, who was speaking yesterday at the Nairobi Securities Exchange on the privatization bill and his how he actually wants it to be and all that. Let's have that before I engage the next guest.
Beyond PPPs, the government is committed to the expeditious divestiture of government interest in various entities across several sectors through privatization. We expect the capital markets to rise to the occasion and mobilize capital and give the taxpayers excellent value. Again, as I made a commitment when I came to this stock exchange, this securities exchange last year, I made a commitment that government is going to divest so that we can democratize our wealth and allow more Kenyans to own a piece of what is Kenya, and especially entities that are currently Kenyan owned. When we went to run with that exercise, we found that the law that existed was actually the biggest impediment to any privatization. It's a law that has been there for the last almost 15 years, and it has made it impossible for any divestiture to happen and for any democratization of what is owned by government to be undertaken. Yesterday in Cabinet, we approved a new law that will provide mechanisms for Kenyans to own part of what is Kenya. And I am looking forward to the Nairobi Stock Exchange, to the Securities Exchange here, to provide the necessary capital for Kenyans to buy into.
Right, there you do have it, the head of state, President William Ruto, talking about Kenyans owning Kenyan. Good morning, Daniel Orogo.
Good morning, sir.
How are you doing?
It's a pleasure. The rains are here, and we thank God for the rains.
Indeed.
It's good to meet Honorable Jimmy Gakuya this year. It's been long since you're on the set again.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Just hearing from what the president is talking about, the privatization and having state-owned parastatals being privatized, and he insists that Kenyans will actually have the opportunity to own Kenya per se. And but then now on Tuesday, this particular bill seeks to have the Cabinet Secretary of Treasury who will spearhead this process. So and he will actually ensure that he handpicks the private entities that will actually privatize the state-owned parastatals. My question this morning would be, how then do we have the trust of the Cabinet Secretary that he will actually have to handpick the right and quote unquote the right private entities to actually privatize this?
I think my colleagues in the panel today have correctly given their thoughts, some of the thoughts about the origin and the reason as to why this bill has to be repealed, and trying to repeal it from the 2005 one. I have opinions about my put about this. One is that I agree that privatization bill of 2005, as the Excellency President has mentioned, has been an impediment when it comes to privatization of companies that are incurring losses, and that the government is spending on a lot but never reviving for the benefit of the economy. It's also important to note that Kenya is part of the free market economy, that we subscribe to capitalistic market, and in any other way we open our businesses to investors both domestically and international, and as long as they abide by the laws, they abide by the code of conduct that controls and that the government has put into stake. While I was looking at the some of these private companies that are listed already, that should be listed to be through IPOs that will be privatized. And of course, most of them are food processing and agro companies, looking at where they're coming from. And that's why I said, sir, I can look at this from different dimensions. It is focusing on our economy, it is focusing on our politics, and it's focusing on our global trade policies as a country. And one, let me say that, begin with the legislative bit of it. You see, the executive has a role in policy and has a role to propose some of the policies that they think would be taken over to the legislature. But it is the prerequisites of the legislature to approve those particular policies and bills. I agree with Mheshimiwa Gakuya that failure to expedite that in a procedure, we are trying to clip the powers of the legislature. Look at the powers that they are given through the Chapter 8 of the Constitution, and looking at the Article 90 and Article 95, giving the oversight role of both the National Assembly and the Senate in the oversight. And so when you say that a bill will be introduced at the floor of the legislature, in the bicameral house, both the Senate and the National Assembly, that's, proposed to stipple and strip off the oversight role of the National Assembly and the Senate, I would really be skeptical when these houses would approve this bill, that indeed this bill would strip them the powers to oversight. And Mheshimiwa Gakuya has put it, and Dr. Alex has put it so well, that you see, this is risking the Constitution in itself. And let me say that in such a venture, it requires that if you want to alter the oversight role of the nature and the form of Parliament, it goes through a referendum. There is no way. There is no shortcut. So I think that should be advised for the executive to note that it proposes to alter the functions and the role of the legislature, which by larger nature Constitution directs it to a referendum. It cannot be done through a house. But come to it on a business. Privatization, what are other things that comes with the privatization? And look at some of the proposals, including privatizing the public universities. And I,
a move that actually has been opposed.
Has been opposed by different unions of the universities. Yeah. And as we were coming up this morning, you can see from the Daily, I think the Nation Daily has it, that even as we speak, privatizing public universities in this country is very risky on itself, because it's going to damage, it's going to interfere, for example, with institutions, help institutions that have been so helpful. This morning, sir, you have seen 140 students. Some of them are coming from poverty-stricken universities that have missed out in help. And that is an addition to 75,000 last year that have not yet received disbursements. So we are looking at some of these proposals. And I agree, to some extent, if we interrogate these proposals, the executive might have had it very well in their mind that is going to save the public, that is going to save the government from public wage bill, a bigger wage bill and debts. But I think it's important for us to diverse deeply and look at the ramifications as to why some of these private institutions that are listed to be privatized, what then is the effects of privatizing them in the process as well.
And still on that, Mahesh, now the question will arise, will these private entities share the same vision that when this state-owned parastatal was started, it had its own visions and missions? When it is going to be privatized, will these private entities share the same visions and missions?
One thing, according to my view, is that once something or a project is a public entity, it has the intention, and this is to make things at least less cost to the common manage, and especially that element of that issue to do with tertiary bursaries and so on.
Yeah.
Once things have changed hand to private, then you must also note that, in fact, the private must set their own agenda, and the agenda is business. And when it realizes that the entity is purely business, then the conditionality must be a different version from the original. And personally, I have an issue there, and that is the reason why in areas like to do with the universities, I think there can be a second vote. But in areas like the dyeing banks and these agro industries, I think in those particular areas, there is a serious concern. Because you remember that, in fact, there's a sugar cane farmer here who suffers a lot after supplying his product to such a miller and waiting for ages of a year or so without having his returns. And therefore, if we have private institutions of the same kind that are giving, making profits and paying the farmers adequately, then I think we need to take the chart to that direction. Only my view is that, in fact, as we intend to do privatization, we must consider domestic, and most largely domestic, because allow Kenyans to have that opportune time to at least buy these shares so that they own these particular properties. And I think that way, the government will get its due, and the bailout of these particular institutions will be aligned. And I am sure that Kenyans have a lot of money individually. It's only that the government has no money, but people has money. And if they are given that opportunity, I am sure that they can do it and they can beat it out. And these particular institutions can back to track, because what is happening here is mismanagement, and especially mismanagement of resources. And once you make it private, then you can be able to monitor it privately, and the conditionality are totally different. Because purely it has proven that actually our own cannot have no mercy to this country. And I don't see, because you just check something to do with the KQ, which has changed from Naikuni to date. There are almost 4 MMDs. None of them has proven any good progress to build it out. It has even sold its properties out of the country and already poured this money to the pit, but actually it is not becoming any success. So in this case, I think a serious bailout should be looked to, and the government has to sell those shares that belong to the government. Okay. But leave what is public to what is private to private. Okay. Sell what is public, and then secure through those IPOs, and I think we can arrive there.
And, speak about matters domestics, and the Trade Cabinet Secretary, Moses Kuria, is on record, saying that the government has so far identified investors from Indonesia and the United States of America. Are these statements, are they worrying to the domestic investors, to the Kenyan investors? Do they feel like, okay, maybe the government isn't interested in us, maybe they're focusing on international investors? I think, Engineer?
We are part of the global village.
Okay.
We have decided as a people, through even our constitution, for us to be a free market, meaning that we allow internal investment as well as foreign investment.
Indeed.
And to an extent that large money investments require people with large money. We don't have that sometimes, in some instances, enough money to be able to do a nuclear plant. But maybe you'd have someone who comes and helps us to do that and invest in the country. It benefits us in terms of creating employment for our people. It helps us in terms of creating growth. The point is, as a free economy, we must welcome everybody. I'll tell you, our problem is that everything we look on a negative shed. Mm-hmm. So that to an extent, there's so much hullabaloo about a bill that was passed by cabinet, as if that has become law. In fact, I started doubting myself on my understanding of law. This is a law now. Tomorrow you'll start being operational. LSK, everybody's commenting. They're saying, look, guys, focus on parliament. Cabinet has passed a bill to say that this cousin isn't working, let's move it in this direction. And there's a very pertinent question you had asked, that when we're starting those industries, there was a vision.
Yeah.
Does that change with privatization? Of course it does. Because the purpose in the initial stage of doing that is because there are no investors to do it. So the government came in to, for example, the sugar farming belt. They had Mumia sugar that was wobbling. Mm-hmm. So in time, as the sugar belt grew, Mumias couldn't handle all that sugar. So that when they had to start Anzoia Sugar Company, they had to start Chemili Sugar Company, they had to start the next one, so that farmers in those areas don't struggle with the sugar cane that they have. Now that the factory is there, the vision is different. The vision now would be to make that Nzoia Sugar Company profitable, number one. But as it becomes profitable, grow the size of a grower scheme to an extent that the farmers benefit and the company benefits. And that's why the thinking has to be now, we move from, because by the way, change is only permanent thing in the world. So you have to change our vision. We already have a sugar factory now. We already have outgrowers. How do we grow them? Have you ever asked yourself?
How long does this maybe change? Because if you look at most of these sugar millers, for example, Chemel Sugar, South Nyanza Sugar, Cabernet Hotel, Mount Elgon Lodge, Golf Hotel, Nzoia Sugar, Miwani Sugar, Kenya Safari Lodges and Hotels, a consolidated bank development of Kenya. I'm naming banks and sugar millers which local farmers will depend on the sugar millers and even in the hotels. How long does this change that you're talking about should be seen? How long does it will it be seen?
You can't put a timeline to it.
Okay.
Remember what I said earlier, that by 2005, 17 years ago, we already had known we need to divest. It's taking us this long to think that the bill that the Act of Parliament that we had is not helping us to be able to speed up the whole process. Do we need to sell them within 1 year, within 5 years? The faster, the quicker, the better. So that for two reasons. One, the government can get its revenue from that and be able to use that money for and I just hope that they don't misuse it by appointing 50 CASs who have no work, by the way. There's no work for CAS. It's just flower girls, if you ask me. 50 of them, whether they are going to waste money in that direction or whether they are going to waste money by buying cars worth 800 million shillings in a time when this country is struggling to feed its people. 60% of our people are living below the poverty line today. Now, whether they do that, that's a different story. But I would rather not collect some more money and put them in this business, because these businesses, if managed correctly, they can be able to come out of the debt that they are in, if run correctly. And that's the solution. So now, when this bill goes to Parliament, I wish that the members of Parliament will pack their sectarian thinking, their complete political thinking, and look at this bill vis-a-vis Kenya and see whether it's beneficial for Kenya, and reject it or pass it. And the Parliament still has that power to do that.
Rogo, before I come to you, a particular comment here on Facebook. Coach _Muli asks, this particular, the bill seeks to have the Privatisation Commission to be a parastatal and to be an authority. So will it again, blot the economy? Because I think what he is basically asking is, having it as an authority will mean that having a funding on its own and more employees again. So do you think that it is going to actually blot the economy?
We already have a commission.
Okay.
And this authority, of course, will be time bound by the time they're able to sell off the what you call the parastatals that are supposed to sell off. We already have a commission. So you already have people who are being paid for that.
Yeah.
And for since 2005 have done nothing. We've thrown money into the pit. We can only hope as a people that when Parliament scrutinizes this bill and accepts it and sends it into an act of Parliament, that's becoming a law, that the people that will be appointed in that authority now will open their eyes and do the right things. These are Kenyans. This is not UDA, this is not Azimio.
Okay.
These are Kenyans who will have a responsibility to privatize those companies so that the government gets out of business of running businesses.
Rogo, as you chip in, there are private entities right now that do have their own success stories. For example, Safaricom, for example, Equity. Which are these lessons that the public parastatals should be picking up from
well,
private entities?
I think the companies you've mentioned have really performed because of less interference by any quarters. you've mentioned Safaricom, you've mentioned other telecos companies, you've mentioned other parastatals. Of course, there are even parastatals that are doing much better.
Indeed.
And because I think they envisioned a leadership and a vision that would want to deliver rather than, get political in its leadership. And I agree with the engineer, I agree with the Honorable James Gakuya. And here then comes a catch. Engineer Alex Mwathi is really pushing for a sobriety in conversation when it lands into the floor of the assembly. Well, that is desirable. But my point of departure is that we would not wish away the fact that our colleague here in the set, Honorable James Gakuya's powers to oversight is stripped off in the expenses of a quick adoption of a policy proposed by the executive. And I think the disquiet that is going to take place in the National Assembly and in the Senate is that intricate balance of where do we rectify, do we recommend this bill that really envisions stripifying our power. I think that is one thing, the dilemma that exists. With the merits and demerits of these proposals, then you wouldn't wish away that the procedure is constitutional. That there is, just like we have agreed on the set, that this is a free market and a liberalized economy. We must also agree on the floor here today that Kenya is a country that is anchored in the rule of law and is anchored in the Constitution, and therefore anything that henceforth with it proceeds and is guided by the Constitution. Allow me also to weigh in, because you've always asked some very pertinent questions here.
Yeah.
If this alters the vision of these particular entities, and I agree with the Honorable James Gakuya, said that if we are going to invite private investors, especially international investors, they come with their vision. Their vision is basically to maximize profit and to minimize on the loss and to revise the code of conduct in the performance of these parastatals. And let me tell you that just as we always cry for capital flight, we always have companies that come to invest in this country. For example, the Chinese and all these people that come, what they do is they import their human resource. What we can only stare at, if we do not regulate this, liberalization, if we do not regulate this privatization, we risk having potential international investors that comes to revise the code of conduct, which is not agreeable and not friendly to the locals. I will draw into your attention. On the 28th of February, our people who are trading in local markets, those who are trading in Mudhurwa, those who are trading in Kamkunji, demonstrated their rights because of the Chinese who are potentially taking over the local markets in terms of retail industry. They marched and they complained because we have allowed liberal marketers to come and invest and therefore interfering with the free flow of how businesses and local manufacturers do their businesses. We are evidently seeing that if we do not regulate, and I agree with the Honorable, the President of the Republic, Dr. William Ruto, that this procedure needs a revision and sobriety. So what I see happening in the Parliament, beyond political, and I've seen, of course, you've seen Azimio and Kenya Kwanza members of Parliament probably taking a different stance. I have seen these, and potentially that, Azimio might say, if we are overpowered in the floor of the assembly, then we take it to the public through demonstration. I think you've seen that kind of direction from the press that have been issued, some weeks ago when this bill was introduced. I would say this can be very unfortunate, because if that happens, then we lose an opportunity as Kenyans to listen sobriety to the merits and demerits of this bill. And therefore, I plead with our member who is seated here today, Honorable James Gakuya, that we are appealing through you that this should be sober debate. This, if you agree at the floor of the National Assembly to adopt or to reject, it should be very clear on the merits of rejection and acceptance of this bill.
From matters politics, how best then should we engage the domestic? You mentioned the traders who are actually demonstrating mostly about the whole China Square fiasco. How best then do we engage these local investors to actually feel like they can actually invest in the state-owned parastatals.
I think, and I agree. Some weeks ago, I was asked to write an advisory about, the whole issue about China Square and how, Chinese and potential international investors and the foreigners could benefit from the policies. You see, and I agree with the engineer, if we have an economy that is welcoming, because if we do not welcome potential investors, our trade policies can be very hostile, even to us who want to invest in other countries. So I think there needs to be a balance, that the government must give a priority to the locals, first of all, in any policies. Because it happens everywhere. If you go to Tanzania, if you go to any other, Horn of African countries and even internationally, their trade policies, first of all, favors their own local investors. It works on the advantages of their country people first. And then you bring the potential international investors. However much there might be potential investment from foreigners, I think our bills must be favorable enough to give a free, advantage and a fair competition where both local and international investors can compete very freely. And I agree with engineer says that, you see, some of these international investors have got big monies that they come with it. But if we do not filter that, then we have a potential of, amassing so much wealth and interfering with the local investors. So I think this is the conversation that I see. That there should even be public consultation. There should be consultation of Kenya Chambers of Commerce. There should be consultation with private, entities, if there's a consortium of that. Just putting them together, to have a debate on this.
Engineer, before kindly, so that I can allow Hesh to make his input before he makes his exit.
30-second clarification.
Right, I think he can give you his time, 30 seconds.
Because I would like us to separate this whole issue of this bill, investment in Kenya, and traders having issues. There are three big debates.
Yeah.
And this bill seeks to sell to Kenyans.
Yeah.
So let's not miss the point.
Yeah.
It's through IPOs to Kenyans. So that Kenyans, and actually the president made it very clear, is that Kenyans can own a part of their own. They are not seeking to get foreign investors in those parastatals.
Right. Mahesh,
maybe just to add a rider on that element of our traders, and especially those who has been on the street claiming that they have been displaced by these foreign investors. One is that, in fact, if you benchmark outside our territories, you realize that, in fact, our neighbors have crafted their policies very well. And they have reinvested some businesses that are purely for the indigenous people. And that area, you realize, like Ethiopia, they have just made a room for those businesses that foreigners cannot be allowed to play, and they are purely reserved for locals. But there are three tiers of partnership. There is a national government partner, then there's, they don't have counties, but they have what we call federal, and then there is that federal level, and then there is that third level, which is now any common mwananchi can be able to partner with any foreigner. But there is a caution that no foreigner can be able to be allowed to own 100% as we are. Today, realize that we repealed our policies, our act in terms of foreign business in 2016, which had a mandatory clause of that % to be owned by a local. Any foreigner could not be able to hold 100% shares. But today, after the period of 2016 law, then it is clear that actually any foreigner can own 100% shareholder of a certain institutional company. In this case, we need to relook in this. Because it has been working very well, and this investment is working very well in Ethiopia, where that foreigner can only own 49, but 51 are purely local. In that case, then you have already protected. Because after bringing this business, you are making profit. If you allow the foreigner to take home all these profits, then you are at danger. But if you have a stake that can be left behind.
Let me take a short break. Hopefully you'll stick around. Keep talking to us. We are discussing matters. The Privatization Bill 2023. We'll be right back to finish that particular thought. Yeah, definitely. So you're watching Morning Cafe. We'll be right back.
sana. This is Dr. Frankie tonight. And of course, on to our first guest of the night. An amazing actress, an award-winning actress, one of the top influencers right now, a top brand ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, and a lady who I respected, of course. I'm proud to call her my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, just listening. Are you ready for something there?
Yes.
You ready, yeah?
Yes.
Give me something, yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Kate Kamau, aka Kate, actress. How much material
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I'm a lot.
Does it even like, is it like normal time to wear like 10 minutes?
Asha.
Ama like lazima uipangie.
Hii lazima shida ni kwenda kwa choo hiyo tu. Yeah.
But they come to think of it, madam new and madam of a jumpsuit. How do you guys go to the washroom? How do you guys deal with that?
That's
whole
why
thing?
we go in pairs to the bathroom.
No, men, you'll never find men going to the washroom in pairs. Anyway, Richie ni aje. Nasikia kusojo, hebu niishie. I think ladies are so privileged. You guys can even call each other boo, babe, sweetheart. Imagine now I'm now calling Richie. Richie babe, ni aje. Unakamjobosa ngapi na saxophone?
But we are okay with that.
Never.
Yeah.
Kate, welcome on the show. You are our first guest ever. Piga makofi. Tuko na interior design round hii.
Ini wajakoya ama
we. Ladies and gentlemen, karibuni sana. This is Dr. Frankie tonight. And of course, on to our first guest of the night. An amazing actress, an award-winning actress, one of the top influencers right now, a top brand ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, and a lady who I respected, of course. I'm proud to call her my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, just listening. Are you ready for something there?
Yes.
You ready, yeah?
Yes.
Give me something, yeah? Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Kate Kamau, aka Kate, actress. How much material
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I'm a lot.
Does it even like, is it like normal time to wear like 10 minutes?
Asha.
Ama like lazima uipangie.
Hii lazima shida ni kwenda kwa choo hiyo tu. Yeah.
But they come to think of it, madam new and madam of a jumpsuit. How do you guys go to the washroom? How do you guys deal with that
That's
whole
why
thing?
we go in pairs to the bathroom.
No, men, you'll never find men going to the washroom in pairs. Anyway, Richie ni aje. Nasikia kusojo, hebu niishie. I think ladies are so privileged. You guys can even call each other boo, babe, sweetheart. Imagine now I'm now calling Richie. Richie babe, ni aje. Unakamjobosa ngapi na saxophone?
But we are okay with that.
Never.
It is important to rethink on how that act was repealed, just to create a room where an investor, a foreign investor, can just invest anywhere 100%. In this case, I am trying to put my eyes into the element where the president has alluded that, in fact, these IPOs will be purely locals. And in this case, I would say it is not fair to have any single institution which will be under sale, under privatization, to be completely 100% under the foreign management. And therefore, let us look at an area where we can allow maybe 40% to up to 50%, where we can involve the foreign, but the rest 50% should be local. And that way, I think so we can strike a balance. In areas to do with these other businesses, it's also important to consider that once you move to China, you cannot even be able to buy from the factory direct. They have put a wall where you cannot close. You must buy from that area of distributor. In this case, let us also not be very out to expose our people. Let us also have a room. In areas of retail market, I think we also need to look, because you need your people more than yesterday. And how do they survive in trade? You allow them to be exploited even at the retail point. In this case, allow the foreign investment to have at least a staircase where they can be able to manufacture, they can be able up to come all the way to distribution. But from there, allow the locals also to take charge. Because surely, why do you leave them out for exploitation and you need them like yesterday? These people survive from these businesses. Once you kill them, then and open that room for other investors without considering them, then you are out of your pace. Because surely, when they language, like the court we have seen Makema in the last 2 years, 3 years, and Kamkunji, that cry is not a cry that actually your indigenous people should cry when the government is in place, because these are the people who elect this government. Right. And the government has a duty to just make sure that they protect these hustlers. These hustlers are more important, and actually they need to be well protected and taken care of. Right.
Engineer, even as you come in, a question has been raised here. Is it the law that I think he's referring to, the Privatization Bill 2005, or the implementation of the law? So was it the law that was wrong, or the implementation of it? And now this brings me to the accountability of having the Privatization Bill 2023. How accountable should it be moving forward?
That's a very good question, because in my opinion, it's really the people that have been appointed in that authority that have failed, because you'd be hearing a lot of proposal in terms of what needs to be privatized, and fails to be privatized because of the law that is available. So for me, my quick opinion is that is a failure of those that are supposed to have been given that responsibility and authority to be able to do that. And so when they fail, we're looking for alternative. That is Kenya. When people that are given a job, they fail, we look for a way out. I've heard the Member of Parliament, my friend James, talk about...
just a minute. I'll have to release.
I wanted him to hear this. I wanted him to hear this. I wanted to hear him to hear this. That's why I changed gear.
Right.
Talking about the fact that we should not allow foreigners to own more than blah blah blah.
Yeah.
That requires a law.
Of course.
That requires parliament to come with a law. And I'm asking my friend who writes papers to assist MP Kakuya in this parliament to propose a bill that entrenches that in our laws. If you don't do that, let's not talk about it. Sure. Because our country is a free economy, complete free economy. To an extent, if you pick up the 5 biggest companies in this country, they are foreign owned. Whether you talk about East African Breweries is owned by Diageo, 67%. They are actually buying off a couple of others. Coca-Cola is foreign owned. Safaricom is foreign owned, for information. Equity now is almost 25% owned by foreigners. Pick anything, biggest hospital. In fact, one organization owns 14% of this economy. So hence, before you put that bill in place, you must now not be, we must not be lazy. We must not be lazy. Yeah. We must study the reality and see the possibility of implementing it. Because if already the economy is almost 40-50% is owned by the foreigners, how do you start saying now sell? It's the same as telling them get out of here.
And I think during the whole China Square fiasco, a question was raised in the internet: how many, Kenyan industries do you actually know? And people are really struggling.
Exactly.
Mahesh, your final words before we do let you go.
I want to agree with the engineer that in fact, after making these laws, the laws are not cast on a stone, and that is why we have always amendments to these particular laws, so that they can fit. After you exercise them and see some gaps, then you do amendment to fit with that particular time. And as much as the businesses is a matter to do, I think we need to look those laws and at least do some amendment and make it better than it is. But I agree that we are in a liberalized economy and we have to move on. But at least we need to craft something, because we have seen our neighbors working and move to Ethiopia. You can't imagine. The business has gone to Ethiopia, even with those kind of conditionalities. So therefore, I don't think to expose ourselves in totality is what will make these foreigners to invest. Okay. We look areas where investors are running away. If it is an issue to do with investment of manufacturers, industrialization, where power is an issue, just address the issue of power, so that at least any manufacturer can be able to manufacture here locally and make profit. And without looking those areas of incentives, we may try to liberalize and also fail to achieve the goals. So let us know what is eating us, our investors, and then address those issues. And when we do that, we are going to take it right.
All right. Thank you very much. And Mheshimiwa does raise pertinent issues addressing the challenges first before we actually move on. As we conclude on this particular matter, let's talk about, still on the whole, accountability of this bill moving forward. And as we begin, I had asked you this. The Cabinet Secretary of Treasury will have the whole mandate, if approved by the National Assembly, will have the whole mandate of actually handpicking these private entities. So again, now it falls on the whole question of accountability.
Yeah, and beyond, because then we're also looking at the changes. One of the changes that we noted, apart from, the bill, being amended. The other change, of course, the engineer has also mentioned that, the commission now becomes a parastatal. The other change with this amendment also, by the fact that now, the minister, the whole privatization, if there is a privatization parastatal, will now be domiciled, in the ministry, the treasury, the Ministry of Finance, and treasury, if that is met. But of course, it also gives an upper hand to the minister. And you've used the word, now it's even unclear how many of these, institutions or how many of these companies are earmarked. Because it's even difficult to tell the number, whether, the government is approximating them to be 10, the opposition is approximating them to be over 50. So you see, it's quite unclear, how many of them would actually be privatized and how many are earmarked now or will be added to this list. But if the number is there, it means that the minister in charge now, the program is domiciled within the Ministry of, of Finance. But again, the question is, now that we have ministries that are allied to this particular, intervention, you are calling upon, because this now will require a lot of ministries that will spearhead it. Finance, Ministry of Trade, and even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If it deals with any issue that now concerns foreigners and, trade policies or international, our domestic or international policies. So I think this one now, this is where we require a little bit and more oversight. Are we even struggling right now when the Minister of Treasury said, the country is broke? And you see, to his realization and to speaking on behalf of the cabinet, they're saying that the country was broke when they inherited zero, money in the coffers, in the public coffers. And the reason is that there were people in the previous government, according to them, who had got a free hand. In fact, they mentioned that, the former cabinet secretary, Honorable Kuru Yetan, would even, authorize some withdrawals through a WhatsApp text.
Yeah.
You see, and controls the control of budget to make some billions of withdrawals. And now here we come with a bill that gives further the ministry some powers, actually to earmark some institution for privatization. What else is within the mandate that is added to this ministry? And this is why I'm trying to say that beyond politicizing, and engineer also said this, beyond the politics that is here, when one issue is mentioned that should be objectively be discussed, then everyone is up in arms depending on the political factions you're coming from. And Mwananchi sometimes loses objectivity in the conversation in what takes place. Because like you're saying, if the parliament is going to oversight and discuss on the functions, I wish, and how I wish that policy experts, engineer and the rest of us would give advisory on, the merits and demerits and what can be excessive when we leave it to the hands of politicians to actually have a conversation on the privatization bill on behalf of Kenyans. That can be over-politicized.
Engineer, finally, as we wrap up this particular conversation and get into matters unga and matters food security, what does the Privatization Bill 2023 and the move to actually approve it speak on the relationship between the executive and the legislative right now?
I think like I said earlier, one of the key issues in this country is that whatever comes up, if it comes from the other side that you don't believe, that you don't support, it's wrong. When people say they're going to demonstrate, there was a lot of hullabaloo. Yet these fellas are looking at Article 37, the Constitution, that allows them to picket. As to whether they picket feasibly or not, that's not is a debate that should take place after. Because like on Monday, I was caught up in a melee on Thika Road. And I was very fortunate to rush into KCA University and hide. Otherwise, the number of stones that were being pelted were very interesting. But the point is, you can't tell that until that happens.
Yeah.
But we as a people always tell that before it happens. To an extent now, there's a bill that goes to Parliament that tends to want to repeal the 2005, that has been inactive or has not been able to fulfill the objectives for which it was created, because we haven't sold parastatals. And the question of which ones are we talking about? You read a list, and that list is a list that was given as a first lot to be privatized. So the question of which one is not something for debate.
Yeah.
It's already there, it's known. Is the Chemeli sugar, is your sugar? If you want to read out the whole list, you can do it again. It's there. So let's not create a story out of no story. Now, but then the only thing is this. Okay. To answer the question, is that everyone is, what can I say, is fearful or concerned that if this bill has been passed by cabinet, which is what everybody is avoiding to say, when it goes to Parliament, there will be no logical discussion by the members of Parliament.
So it will basically be a rubber stamp
They'll take positions, and in everyone's opinion, Kenya Kwanza has a majority in Parliament, so it will be rubber stamped.
Yeah.
And that's why my call to the people who don't maybe agree with Kenya Kwanza, read that thing. Don't give stories. Tell us what you don't like about it. So that because in democracy, the majority have their way, the minority have their say. Tell us for a fact, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like this. So that as the bill is passed, if it's passed by the group that supports the government, then we know your position was based on these points, not stories, not going around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because of time, I want us to get into matters, the food security, and still, speaking about matters the cabinet. So again, on Tuesday, the cabinet allocated 23.96 billion shillings for April all the way to October for matters including food, assistance, and it also approved the restructuring of Uproar, Kimorer, and Itare dams. And yesterday, we did see Cabinet Secretary of Agriculture and Livestock, being grilled by the National Assembly, Standing Committee on Agriculture and Livestock, to discuss matters maize flour subsidy program and also the Strategic Food Reserve Trust Fund. As governance experts today, advise us, how best then do we move forward? The reins are here with us, but then how do we tap into these particular opportunities? I'll begin with you on this, the decisive steps to actually address food security in the country.
Well, I think also that is coming in the backdrop when there's a subsidized distribution of fertilizers in Gusii land, because the president is expected to visit that region and to launch a number of projects that are geared towards ensuring infrastructural development, massive, and also to provide some subsidies that would ensure that those agricultural areas, farmers are provided with fertilizers that are subsidized from the rate, from what I have seen. I saw the cabinet secretary appearing in a committee, and I think one of his remarks was that there is a shortage of maize in the country, and that means that there is a duty-free importation, I think potatoes, and rice that are already on the way coming. And he urged the country to shift on how they do their balanced diet. And that there should be a lot of consumption of potatoes and rice more than flour that is coming from maize. Now look here. We have had very massive infrastructural projects, the Galana Kulal, that was earmarked to be the government in the last regime, what was called the 4 pillars of industrialization of the regime. That was massive, food production to secure the country and ensure there is food security, sir. But do we blame the shortage of rains? Do we blame the global climate change, that has been coming? Do we blame, the Russian-Ukraine war? That's why we are not able, to import fertilizers. And that's why we are not able, to come through with our massive production. Look, our farmers have decried that there is enough production of maize that are lying with the millers, that the government is not really keen enough to distribute. Why can't the committee listen to the farmers? Because the Senate has been visiting the counties trying to get the information that are coming from farmers as well. So I think the bold step is that even as the rains, and thank God we are having the rains now, and there is, production, there is people cultivating. How I wish that the government would revamp, the mega projects that were earmarked, before. The distribution, the irrigation programs that, the Aurora and Kimored. But I also see that there is importance. And again, I agree that we are a country that is democratic. And you've seen the Italian, I don't know, was the president of the prime minister that was here, and government-to-government agreement that the government now would call for those who petitions against, the case of Aurora and Kimored, now to be, that case could be heard and could be repealed and could be allowed that projects to go on. I think that was a bold step towards assuring that this distribution of water and irrigation in those areas that would ensure that we do not only depend on rain-fed agriculture, but we are able also to distribute, and to have enough irrigation when drought, and famine is hitting these areas. Lastly, on revising the list of importers, because I see there is a huge interest, whether trade in agriculture, whether there is agro, marketing, and as Honorable Jimmy has left, it's also important that he reiterated. Could we balance enough on how we do our trade? Because I again foresee a situation where our own production, food production, is curtailed by massive importation. We are coming back to these issues about Kenyans feeling disenchanted, about foreigners who are taking over, even agro-production companies on and, putting our local investors at the periphery. I think these are long-term and short-term policies that could be sobriety, engaged on, so that we ensure that we have unfair policy and unfair production and unfair agricultural production in this country as well.
And speaking of matters, long-term and short-term solutions, and you had raised a point there that the government needs to listen to the farmers.
Yes.
And right here, you can see farmers, they're accusing state officials of diverting subsidized fertilizer. But then on the other hand, the State Department for Matters, Crop Development, PS Harsama Kelo, saying that the measures to actually hasten fertilizer delivery, which includes transportation of farm inputs from Mombasa to Eldoret using Kenya Railways wagons, distribution of fertilizer through the Kenya National Corporation and NCPB depots. So, Engineer, how then do we have, first and foremost, are these band-aid measures by the government to actually, the government says we do have around 7 million bags of fertilizer that we're going to distribute to you. We have noted a few centers in 12 counties so don't worry, farmers, we're actually going to sort you out. Do you feel like these are band-aid measures right now, or they're actually posterity measures?
The reality is that this country is hungry. The reality is that we don't have enough food, and hence the demand has outstripped supply, hence the skyrocketing prices. This is not those times when manufacturers were profiteering out of Kenyans. It's a real situation. One of the comments that was made by the Minister of Agriculture is that in the countries they have gone, places like Malawi were used to get maize that they themselves don't have, that they are also struggling. Because the weather situation, the climate change is real for everyone in the world. To an extent that other areas where we were getting the supply from has also dried up. And your question is, what do we do? Because there's a short-term solution to make sure that we eat, our people eat. And there's a long-term process. So the lack of food has been caused by two things. That rains, the nature has conspired against us, that rains have failed us for the last 2 years. So that the peasant farmers would get their maize from their shambas can't get them. Can we do anything about that? No. The only way to solve that is for the government to do what they are trying to do, and I think they need to put more effort into that. That they ensure that there is enough food and subsidize them. I'm one of the people who keep saying, cut off the taxes that you are charging on those foodstuffs, because you're taxing your people and saying the prices of commodities are high, and at the same time you're using that money to buy 1 million cars and whatever. I must go back there, right? And flowers in the offices, where you never bought a flower in your house. It's a Mzungu thinking. So that in a short term, avail food for the people. And governments are able to do that because they can talk to other governments to ensure that food comes in. Whether you get the maize from the United States of America where they throw away, you bring it in so that the yellow maize is used for the feed for the whatever, for animals, and then the white maize can be used for consumption. That's the short term. But long term is what we are talking about, Kimolel Dam, Kulalu, and also these Hola irrigation schemes. And other areas that we can do. I have a friend of mine who does statistics and he does all this. And one of the articles he wrote the other day shocked me. He wrote that Turkana County, the arable land in Turkana County, combined with Marsabit, the arable area, if you irrigate, you'll be able to supply enough wheat and maize for this country and export. There's only those two counties. So what is the long-term plan? And the medium-term plan is what the government is doing now, trying to give the farmers fertilizer. But the question is, do the farmers need only fertilizer? In my opinion, no. So they have been devastated that they don't even have seeds. They have been devastated because even now, if you read in the media, they will tell you that there are cartels that are selling substandard seeds. That the Kenya Seed Company that used to supply seed to the farmers have already been infiltrated by the so-called cartels that are ensuring that the seed that comes out is not good for the farmer.
A case in point that you do mention in Turkana, where we do have this arable land, is it a matter of miscommunication from the government and the Minister of Agriculture and the farmers? Is it a whole miscommunication?
No, we spend too much time talking about everything else except what matters. That's the issue. That the parliament that's supposed to create policies and laws to guide this country are spending more time talking about mandamano and all the other things. And I'm not talking about this one. I'm talking about the last 60 years as a country. The thing that comes out of parliament is not conversation about the growth of this country, the change that we need in this country. That's why you find James seated here. He's talking about Kenya should not allow foreigners to come. He's been in parliament for the last 15 years. I wish he was here. I was going to tell him off. 15 years. He hasn't put up a bill to address that. What does he expect me and him, people outside in the streets, to do?
But because he isn't here, he doesn't have the right to reply.
It's important. That's why I desired very much that I tell him, so that he can, from now, whatever he is responsible for, he should not point it to others. It's for them to do that.
And, and largely all other legislators.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm talking about the last 60 years. We've been talking about fighting governments, stolen elections, and all that. Do you know, yesterday I drove on Mombasa Road from Emali. I had gone to see some projects in Loitoktok. And what shocked me is the number of fowl and something I saw CNC, and I think another one called Homo or whatever from China. The number of trucks on that road, the KDA, KDKs. And I looked at that and I said, oh my God, as we talk about mandamano, as we talk about stolen election, as we talk about all these mundane things in life, in 10 years, 90% of the trucks in Kenya will be Chinese. The Mercedes-Benz, the Scanias will be gone. Because those people are looking far ahead than we are doing.
Right.
They're selling those trucks cheaper to us so that we can buy them. As soon as we have them, then they'll be able to have a market for their spare parts.
Right.
What are we thinking? We want to kill whatever is available and kill the economy as it were. So the answer to that question is we need to refocus and seriously think about the short term, the medium term, and the long term policy of feeding this nation.
Let's go back to the whole ghost of Uproar, Kimorer, and Itare dams. And, you know, he did mention some of these other, you know, posterity measures. So as we focus on this, it's going to be a whole issue of, again, going back to, you know, the ground of Uproar and Kimorer and these particular dams and assessing them and, you know, seeing how then do we have and bolster these food reserves that you do have so that they can actually help us in the next time that currently we are actually facing a biting drought. But then in the next, say, 15 years, the next time that you do have this, we say, hey, look back, that we actually, you know, focused this particular dams. But then how best do we have this? You know, focusing on, you know, the farmers who are there, the local people who are on the ground. How best do we do this?
Well, I think we once boasting as a bastion of food production in the region. Kenya was known as a country where we would even import to our neighbors and do businesses because, you know, we had enough production of agricultural feeds and products. We have had successive policies. So you may note that one of there's a joke, you know, within you know the corridors that you see countries that are developed would come and look at our policies and they take it and go implement it, well, as we are busy politicking and they develop. We have been touted that at independence we were at equal, you know, economic scale with some of these Asian tigers, Indonesian and Malaysians. But right now, they would even, you know, import some of these food to us. So first of all, let's begin by acknowledging that our policies, our best written policies on agricultural production and food security lies implemented on what engineer is calling on, you know, on people doing politics and are busy preoccupied with non-issues. You know, the last government, food security and food production was mentioned as one of the big four agendas of the last regime. After they had won, you know, the 2017 elections, and they revised all these, you know, Jubilee manifesto to collapse them in big four. And that is where irrigation, you know, and supply of water like in areas that are drought-stricken, Uproar and Kimorer being one of them. There are even other dams in Ukambani.
Yeah.
You know, that it's not only Uproar, like engineers mentioned. The other dams that, you know, the production now hangs, the construction hangs because of massive corruption. And let me be honest enough that some and most, if not all, people that are currently in this current government were on the last government who are aware of the discussion that were there and how far the regime had implemented until the ghost of corruption collapsed, you know, the good policies that were in table. So you asked a very pertinent question. Could we begin, instead of piling up proposals, piling up the policies, could we begin by going back and revising how far are we, for example, with Uproar and Kimwarer? Because I've seen the government has gone back to repeal the case that is blocking the construction, that was blocking the construction. And government of Kenya and government of Italy agreeing that they would, talk government to government so that that process would be revamped again. But of course, like engineers mentioned, is it only water that is shortage in supply? Is it a matter of seeds? Is it a matter of other subsidies? Is it also a matter of providing the most technical, advices and training to these agriculturalists because of the contemporary challenges of climate change and adaptation that these particular farmers should have? So I foresee a situation where we would begin to revise our policies that are lying on the shelves and training, giving technical support with the live stakeholders that are there in context with the contemporary challenges that Kenya is facing, like any other global nations that are facing. In that nature, then we are able to catch up and with what is happening for us, because then there would be an haphazard intervention when we begin to say that, of course, let's pick it from where we leave it, without necessarily revising on the challenges that, the realities, as engineers mentioned, that are bedeviling the country and the region and globally as per now.
And still going back in time, and now this is yesterday, still on matters of controversy. So you have your Daily Nation there. Content on page 7, and it's quite, it was quite, a whole interesting conversation by the National Assembly, Standing Committee on Matters Agriculture and Livestock, when they were grilling Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturen. Just to read this particular bit for the viewers. While the contract, now this is matters of the same subsidy plan, different contracts. Well, the contract signed by CMA, composed of the country's largest millers, 27 in total, did not obligate them to ensure the maize flour actually gets to the market. The other one stipulated tough obligations for the 102 small-scale millers under the program. The contract signed between the government and CMA stipulated that the millers will not be responsible if the maize flour failed to reach consumers, while the other one signed with the UGMA laid out tough conditions, including that the traders will be held responsible for the price a packet of flour will retail at. Again, still comes back to what you were discussing earlier in matters subsidies and all that. Now, this particular UNGA subsidy, it's a whole controversy embedded in it. Then questions will really want to know. At the end of the day, they just want a hot plate of ugali and a cheaper price, but then they're looking at the dailies here and they're asking themselves, how did you reach here?
These are matters that were discussed in Parliament. So if they brought out 2 contracts, then the 2 contracts were there. And it's simple. One is for the big millers. They were free. They would get the money and do whatever they want. The small millers were obligated to do something, which is very sad. Because that's what I said earlier, that we concentrate on the squirrels in a hunt, and we forget that they are bigger animals that we can kill so that we have enough meat for ourselves. That a government can have 2 contracts is a sad thing, because it should have been, in my understanding, and this has been something discussed, that even the subsidies were never paid. That's the other part of it. That contractually, the millers were promised money, but they were not actually given money. And I just hope they're going to be paid. And that's why the current government, actually stopped it, and hope that would have rains in October, and by now we'll be having enough food in the country. Unfortunately, the rain failed. And the key issue is that these are the stories we've been fed for the last 60 years as a country. We as Kenyans, and I think the Honorable His Excellency President William Ruto need to hear this, is that we are hungry as a country. We don't want these stories. We want food. This was done, thank you. Arrest those people who are concerned with that, because if it was done, then it's theft. Arrest them. It's not corruption, it's theft. But please, give us food on the table. Today, we are not bothered about who stole, who didn't steal. And it's a good thing for it to come out that actually what has been said before is a reality, but the average Kenyan needs to have unga on the shelf that he can afford. Today, I'm still trying to get it around my head that the shilling has dropped from 121 to 142 shillings, lost 20 shillings in a span of 6 months. And I haven't heard anyone talk about it, you know, in the sense of the past, where people, you'd hear the central bank governor speaking about it, what they are doing, they are releasing more dollars, they are doing whatever they are doing to be able to be. Because once the shilling drops and you are a net importer of everything, including the maize that we are talking about, because it will come through dollar and all that, it means that it will be that percentage, almost is almost 18% more expensive just because of this dollar situation. So I wish he could realize that all these other things are important, but a hungry man is an angry man.
Yeah.
And hungry man is an angry man. And hungry men, meaning men here standing for men and women, be sensitive to the other gender, have done very difficult things in the past because of hunger.
Okay.
The French Revolution was because of hunger. And very many other revolutions like Tunisia and Ethiopia, they revolted a few years ago because they couldn't get the pata bread that is used by the common mwananchi. And the whole government came down. So even if you leave aside this Mandamano situation, that he's harping on that as an issue, this is a real issue. And I pray that the president is listening so that he can start thinking what to do in an immediate basis.
I can see you, perusing this that particular article, and facial expressions tell a lot.
I think it's quite intriguing when I say that there are two particular contracts given to the same millers, and one of the that is CMA,
Cereal Millers Association.
The contract says that they will not really be held to account when the maize fails to reach the market. But the other one, signed by UGMA, laid tough conditions that they will be held to account if. I think that particular, it gives me some goosebumps, because then you could see the interest manifest on the issuance of these contracts. And I agree with engineer. Some of these needs accountability. I keep on saying in this session that, you see, the day Kenyans would begin to know the value of what 1 billion shilling means, of what 800 million shillings mean, and losing it, what does that mean, then I think Kenyans will rise up in arms, and regardless of which political function they are, they will actually see it as a loss and robbing the future of the country. Because as we speak, we are still lensed into political factions. Because I can tell you, even this one, even see the mood of conversation yesterday at the standing committee.
Yeah.
Every time a cabinet secretary is called upon to answer some questions, there's always alignments taking place, even in these committees, where we lose, and members of parliament lose objectivity in questioning, because trying to see which side of their bread is buttered. I think this is very unfortunate, and I agree with Engineer Mwathi that this is not only theft, but I think this amounts to fraud. It amounts to stealing. It's massive stealing from the public. It's massive stealing from the future of a country. And I think this is one thing that the parliamentary committee, which of course has got a quasi, one of the things we should also know, that parliamentary committees has a quasi-judicial authority. Far from recommending charges, they can even issue warrant of arrest. It is within their standing powers to determine that. So I think it's important for me that this is a huge loss for a country if it's true that some of these companies cannot be held liable because of contracts that were signed, even to the office of the Attorney General. by that time, because that is what the paper says. So I think this could be a judicial issue that could call for accountability. Allow me also to state, because I've seen it mentioned, that, this is one area that, if not taken clearly, our politicians are funny, because this would play into the gallery of the opposition. The oppositions are looking for each and every effort, to try to contextualize the challenges that are bedeviling government to appeal to the citizenry that I would call here sometimes are half-baked with information, that do not have time to objectively participate on matters, on hearings, on prioritized issues that are affecting the country. So I think it's important as a citizenry also that if our parliamentarians are losing it in the legislature through their committees, I think it's important for public authorities where citizens can voice their strong voices, like the Law Society of Kenya, like the civil society organizations, like any other organization that represent the public, to question strongly and objectively why some of these misdemeanor that happened before cannot be liable and to be held to account.
Okay. And just for context, I didn't mention this earlier. These particular subsidy programs that were in former President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime. So again, I think it is going to play, as you mentioned, it's going to play a whole political fracas.
Yes, of course. Of course, it's taken a political direction, because if you read further, and on The Nation documented it a while ago, I think also the Standard in page 7, that these are some of the issues opposition are beginning to craft, their demands and memorandum over. And let me tell you, and engineers mentioned, that a hungry nation has no time at all to objectively, listen to some of these proposals. Once they're able to sensationalize these objective memorandums, the citizens would turn out and call for unga. Because you could see even on the demonstration, sir, people were mentioning, unga, now calling for this. So if a smart politician is able to contextualize these issues to appeal to the emotions of the angry citizenry, then it becomes a point of a revolution. It becomes a point. We've seen unga revolutions in different countries.
Yeah.
We've seen regions that are threatened because citizens are calling for accountability on the bare minimum domestic demands, like the prices of flour, like the prices of basic commodities, and of attacking some of these particular issues here.
Okay, let's talk about funding, engineer. And yesterday during the grilling, the funding of the National Cereals and Produce Board was raised, and members of the ministry asked, does NCPB have funding? But then was larger on that, the fact that the cabinet allocated 23.96 billion shillings all the way from April to October for food assistance. This amount of money is huge.
Yeah.
And mostly in Kenya, during such huge amount of money, questions are always raised, eyebrows are raised. At the end of the day, people need accountability. Where did this money by October this year? By again now November, people will have questions. Was this amount of money used correctly as it should be? Your point of view, where do you think maybe the government should focus this particular funding towards for food security?
In the past, and I think he alluded to, we had programs, policy papers that determined the key areas of issues as a nation. And it was very clear even during the independence that one is hunger, the other is education, health, and all that. So the initial focus was to ensure that we have programs that goes towards doing that. The establishment of the Kenya National Cereal Board was one such, because the idea was for that to be a strategic storage of grains for future. For example, like today, we'll not be struggling because all these silos for National Cereal Board will be holding maize. But over the last couple of years, starting with the Moi era, is an era. What happened is that this was converted into a trading entity to benefit those that were there. It lacked the possibility of being able to be strategic, strategic storage for grain. Now, they're asking whether it's funded. Does it have a reach through the country? I don't think so. Has it been faithful in handling our money? No. We have, we have an MP who is in for 67 years and somebody else in about 70 years or thereabouts because they embezzled. They imported air and charged NCPB, and NCPB paid them. And for that reason, they are already, and by the way, they are not in jail. They are free birds in this country. Because this country doesn't, sometimes the law is a suggestion, not a real reality. It shouldn't be that. Just understand, it shouldn't be that. So I think NCB lost that ability to be the strategic reserve for grain in this country. And sometimes some of us pray that somebody will be opened up and realize that this country is bigger than them. Because when Lee Kuan Yew took over Singapore in 1965, he says he was faced by two questions. Number one, I could embezzle and become the richest man in the world. Or I could manage Singapore properly, Singapore become one of the richest countries in the world. And in the process, I'll become a rich man. So when he asked himself, why do I want to be the richest man in the world while my people are wallowing in poverty? In Kenya, we seem to have taken the first option. We become rich ourselves and let everybody else be poor. So this is a lot of money. I have trust that they have thought through to actually come up with a figure of 23-point-something billion shillings as to where this will go. But remember, for the Kenyan right now, like I said earlier, is having food on the table. Is the cost of living high this year? No, it was high last year. It was high year before. We know the COVID came and hit us. We know the rains came and hit us. We know the political shenanigans hit us. But today, please, food on the table, and affordable food on the table, and then let's deal with the rest of the issues.
And still an additional, when you raise matters NCPB, we've had farmers and maize farmers, complain that we won't sell to NCPB because, they want maybe an overrated amount of money, not the one that we are used to, selling to NCPB. Your thoughts on this? So because most of these farmers say we'll keep this amount, we'll keep our stock, our maize grains until you lower the amount.
For me, where I stand, the issue is to go back and rethink why we had a National Cereal Board. And it was for that purpose, to be a strategic reserve for grain, which means then you mop up the grains and store them. It's not a trading company. It's only that when it reaches a point where you have accumulated a lot, then you release it back to the market so that you can be able to balance. Just like the central bank does with the dollars. Hold back when the shilling goes down, then you release so that you revamp the shilling. The Kenya National Trading Corporation is the one that is a trading entity of the government, and that should be the one that should be used for trading. If we went back to why NCB existed, the NCPB would work, because we work with the farmers in terms of when we have a crop. Then once the farmers have, it stabilizes the prices by having a minimum. I think is Irungu Kangata who keeps talking about the minimum guarantee return for the farmer. So the NCPB should have a minimum guarantee return for the farmer. So that when the farmer has surplus, they are not messed up by the millers buying at very low prices. But when the farmers can sell to the millers and make their money, let them sell. NCB should not come in between and compete, so that it becomes as if they are buying and competing with the millers.
Yeah. As we wrap up this particular conversation, the rains are here with us. Yeah. So again, it's always a whole issue of not using this particular opportunity well. So how best should we, even for the small scale farmers, to the campaigns? Which kind of campaigns should we be having right now to use this particular opportunity that we do have in most parts of the country that are receiving the rainfall?
It's just simple. One is that that's why I said it's important beyond distribution of fertilizers. to know the basic needs of a farmer. One is, I still think it's important that we revise the curriculum of technically training, our agriculturalists. There's too much rain, and you can see, we are always in extremes. That when there is so much rain, then there is flooding, and you do not harvest this rain and store, enough for production or for irrigation. So I think it is important for us to have, through the Ministry of Agriculture and allied ministries, to train farmers on the importance of, rain harvesting, on the importance of, even using, quality seeds and quality fertilizer that are distributed by the government, so that, like engineers mentioned, in years' time, we are able to have farmers now distributing to, our strategic grain reserves and being, paid in time. Because also payment in time is another issue. There is also that they supply these strategic foreign reserves, but then payment is another issue. Then they start following and, sometimes get frustrated that the government bought, but they have not been paid, to what they have supplied. I think if time could have allowed us, because without deviating, is that we have seen, and I think there's some breaking news that, the 50 CAS have actually officially been appointed. Yeah. How I wish that we would have time to inform the public.
Actually, I'm being informed that
yes,
they're being sworn in right now.
Yes, about this kind of appointment, because, the government, the head of state has a prerogative, through the powers that are conferred to him, to a point. But I think you saw the rejoinder from the Speaker of the National Assembly, that the National Assembly is enjoined in protection and furtherance of the Constitution that are, furtherance of the rights that are within the Constitution. And by and large, the CAS is not a constitutional office. Yeah. Let us agree on this constitutionally without not really taking political sides.
So it doesn't have any mandate.
It doesn't have to actually vet, and therefore throw back the mandate to the head of state. In other terms, to do whatever he wants with his appointees. And these 50, what Ahmed Nasir has defined this morning as freeloaders, I think is quite unfortunate for us. It's good to be objective enough that we are going to have 50 people, like Alex Mothi said, without no responsibilities, but who are titled to be paid by the public millions of shillings per month and to the annually. So I think it's important for us in this set to objectively say that this is very unfortunate to the people of the Republic of Kenya, that we are going to have 50 people who are doing nothing in the office because their position, we have the principal secretaries that are assisting, the cabinet. So I think we are at a sad state. And unfortunately, again, this is where the opposition is going to, to petition the government. The government are making a lot of blunders and falling to the hands of the opposition to whip out the emotions of the, we call it for sobriety. If the government has to sit down and dialogue on structural dialogue on matters that are affecting the country, this is one of them. Okay. This is one of the areas to dialogue about and see if we need this CAS actually to be paid by the public.
Because of time, briefly, I know you really want to dive into the CAS topic, but then your last words.
I think that has been debated quite a lot, and my opinion is exactly the same I had when Uhuru Kenyatta appointed 29 of them, and I said they have no work, and I was proven that they didn't have any work. All the CAS had no work whatsoever, and the 50 will not have any work. Unfortunately, it would be a good thing if a country is performing well, but right now the country, with the admission of the government, is performing very poorly. So you can't afford to pay anyone for doing nothing. It's unfortunate. But let me take this opportunity that at the moment, the month of Ramadan is with us, to wish all the Muslims listeners Ramadan Mubarak, and may the Lord guide you in this process.
All right. Engineer Alex Mothe, governance expert, and Daniel Rogo, governance expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time and valid company and